So thanks for coming along tonight. Tonight I wanted to tell you my story about how we took NewVoiceMedia, the company that I founded, really from an idea and how we built it up into a really successful global software company, employing over 450 people with global reach, with offices out in the US, Australia, Europe, and so on, and how we had an eventual exit last year for $350 million. I thought, well, where do we begin? So I thought I'd start this story with how I actually first met my co-founder, Richard Pickering. And this was a long time ago. This was back in the mid-90s. At that time, I was working with a small software company based in the centre of London, doing communication software. We were actually doing quite novel stuff for that time. We were one of the first companies to connect computers to business telephony, powering business telephony through software. And Richard at that time was working for BT. He was running their internal telephone networks, all the telephone networks that made the internals of BT as a company run. And they had a problem. They'd privatized sort of 2 or 3 years before. They'd shed a lot of people. But they got then, what that meant is they got a lot of buildings, they got a lot of infrastructure they weren't really using, kind of lots of stuff that was half full. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to break the link between desk telephones, not have the number point to a particular desk or a location, but have the number belong to a person and move around when that person moved around, when they moved office, when they went to a different place. And that's what Richard came to us to do. He couldn't find that within BT itself. And that was the first time we met. Then Richard kind of moved on and he got more and more responsibilities at BT. And one of the things he started to run was their internal call centres. So we ran their 150 service, the telephone operator. And in those days, this was pre-internet, that meant that not only did they handle all the faults when people phoned up and said, oh, this is not working or this has gone wrong, but they also did a lot of the sales as well, because that was the way you bought a new telephone or got extra features on your landline. And Richard thought about this and thought, well, there's a couple of things I can do here. Because I can either do what everybody has always done in the call centre and focus on reducing the costs and making it more efficient. And that meant getting rid of people, getting them off the line quicker, getting rid of these pesky customers and stop them bothering us. Or I could do it a different way. If I really focused on building this relationship with customers, I can sell more stuff. I can do this much more smartly and actually give people a better experience in the process. If actually we're nice to people, stop trying to get rid of them, we can actually make more money. And this was quite revolutionary at the time. And to do this, he needed more technology. Again, he couldn't find it within BT. So instead of coming to us, because we were quite small, he went out and found a similar company in the US called Genesis. And they were one of, again, similar to global communications, so they were one of the pioneers of connecting software to business telephony. And in fact, he liked them so much, I thought, okay, I'm going to go out and join this startup in San Francisco. I'm going to give up my nice, cushy, safe job here at BT, and I'm going to go and join the startup. So he did. A couple of years on, 1998, I met up with Richard again. We'd been growing at Global Communications. We've been building up more and more applications, and we were looking to spread out. We wanted to not just work with people's internal phone systems, we wanted to work on the public network. And Richard had come up with pretty much the same idea at Genesis. He wanted to take their rich applications and put them out on the public network, and that's what he'd set up a small group to do at Genesis. So we met up, and we met up on a technical committee for the public telephone network. We came up with what was at the time quite a revolutionary idea of putting an API on the public telephone network, letting anybody, the idea was to let anybody write rich applications that would work with the telephone network. And this was back in the late 90s. Now, it's only something that's kind of catching on now if you think about sort of companies like Twilio and so on doing similar things. But this was done a long time, this was thought of a long time ago. But we failed to do it because we were trying to convince other companies to do it. And they were doing quite nicely. They were selling very expensive bits of kit to sit on the company's site, sit in the company's data center. very expensive, very complicated to set up, lots of professional services to get it working right and to integrate it to everything else. So of course, when we think about it, they're not going to say, well, we want to give up this way of selling stuff. We want to give away something cheap and easy to everybody. No, we're making lots of money doing this. So it kind of fizzled, and we didn't get anywhere with this idea. Then we move on to 2000. It's kind of like 2000 was a big thing. It's kind of like, it's a bit like sort of New Year, but New Year on steroids. One of these times to sort of think about, okay, well, time to make sort of New Year's resolutions, to do something different. So I decided that I was going to finally sort of live my dream. I sort of thought for many years that I didn't want to be working for somebody else. I felt I could do a better job. I had my boss there, and I don't know what you may find this when you go out to work. You sort of work for somebody for a bit, and you think, I could do a much better job than them. They're, quite frankly, a bit of an idiot. Oh my God, why have they done that? Surely I could do a better job myself. And I thought, now's the time. Now I need to go out and do this if I'm ever going to do it. So I went out and I set up my first company. And this was focused on voice over IP technology. For what one of the times quite a novel idea of putting voice calls out over the internet. And this was kind of just about the time that companies like Skype and so on were starting. So it was very, very new, very fresh. So I started up a company to do voice over IP. And that was an interesting exercise, and I learned lots of things there. I learned that I was great with the technology. I can build the technology. I've been doing similar things for years. But I didn't have all the skills there. I wasn't so great at going out and finding new business and going out and selling to different companies. So after about 6 months, I decided to close that. But I learned a very important lesson there, that when you're starting out on a new business, it's very difficult to do something on your own. It's much easier if you can find somebody else to be your co-founder with you that has these kind of complementary skills, that can fill in the gaps, what you're not good at, and vice versa. And you can do it as a team. And it's much easier to do it as a team because you've got somebody else to rely on, somebody else to pull you through the difficult patches, somebody else just to share ideas with. So starting to think, okay, well, what next? What's plan B? This hasn't worked. Let's try something else. And while I was thinking about what to do, I fell in with this guy who was also trying to start up a business. Quite frankly, it was not a great idea, and he wasn't a great businessman. But I thought, okay, well, I do this as I didn't know what I would do. I'll do work with him for a couple of weeks. His idea was to set up a concierge business for sort of high net worth individuals, basically a way of sort of, it was very difficult to describe because he hadn't really thought through what his business plan was, but to work with high net worth individuals, have a subscription from there, they can sort of jet set around the world, and this concierge service will then basically cater to their every whim and get them tickets or whatever else, or cars or rooms, whatever they needed that day. So to do this, part of that, he needed a global telephone system so that they could phone up anywhere in the world and be put through to their handler, almost, I suppose, their personal concierge. So I was trying to work this out, thinking about, okay, how could we get this to work? And I thought, okay, I'll phone my mate Richard, maybe he can help, back from Genesis. And what I hadn't realised is Richard was now actually back in the UK. Earlier that year, Genesis had IPO'd, and Richard had actually then left. He'd done quite nicely out of it. He was one of the first employees, and come back to the UK. So we got thinking about this. I'm thinking, well, what about this idea we had several years ago of doing something with the public telephone network? And how about combining it with our experience as a call centre? And let's see if we can really build this. Let's make call centre technology that anybody can use, focused on giving really high levels of customer support, driving revenues rather than trying to reduce costs. And that was kind of how NewVoiceMedia was born. We thought, if nobody else is going to do that, we can do that. We can strike out and do this. And that's when we started in 2000. Now, this first few years were actually quite tough, quite difficult. We were trying to, one, create an awful lot of technology. You may not know this, but there's an awful lot of technology that goes into a call center. There's a lot of complex things going on there. So one, we had to create quite a lot of technology. But most importantly, we had to change people's minds. They were used to spending a lot of money, £2 to £3 million every sort of 5 to 6 years to refresh their kit within their data center or their office. Maybe another £1 million on top of that to get it all configured and set up. And then have it there, sort of sitting in the corner, nicely there with its big sort of racks with flashing lights on it, something that they could touch and feel ownership for and trust, because it was reliable, because they could see it and touch it, feel it. And we were asking them to not do that. We were asking them to trust us and put everything in this kind of crazy, nebulous cloud thing that they hadn't really heard of and they didn't know what it was. And yeah, okay, maybe that's okay for websites or something, but they fall over all the time and nobody really cares. We're caring about telephony here, and we need to make sure that phone calls really come through to our system, to us, because that's where we make our money and that's where we talk to our customers. So those first few years were really difficult. We had to spend a lot of time educating people what the cloud was and how they could trust it and so on. So it was quite a slow start. And it was also just funded from ourselves. It was funded from our savings and the profits that we can make and a bit of money that Richard had got out of Genesis. So it was kind of a slow start there. But we were progressing and building the company. 2004 was when we got our first big client. Very important to get these big names, these big proof points, because it's always the most difficult customer to get is the first one. And then it gets slightly easier, because you can say, well, look, they bought it, it must be good. So it's trying to get that ball rolling, and we wanted to get some big names in. And the first big name we got was Parcelforce in 2004. And that was a very interesting lesson. So what they had there is they had a couple of real visionaries in their call center. What they'd done is they'd done the same as everybody else. They had a big central call center. But they did some analysis of what was going on there. And what they realized was that most of the calls that were coming into the call center to say, okay, where's my parcel? Or I want it redelivered on Tuesday instead of Wednesday. And what was actually happening? People were phoning into the call center, and the call center was putting them on hold, and then they were going to phone the local depot to see where the parcel was, or find out if it could be changed the delivery, and then eventually they get back to the caller, pass it on. And they're thinking, well, why? Can't we just cut out the middleman here? Let's just route all the calls through to the depots themselves, because the depots are the ones doing the work. So they came to us for the technology to do that. And that's what we did. We gave them a system where it's completely decentralized. We'd route all the calls to their 52 depots around the country based on where the people were calling from. Put them through to their local depot, do the overflow and so on. But the most important lesson there was about these champions, these visionaries within Salesforce. So when you're selling to a big company, that's what you need to find. You need to find these champions that will really push you forward. And you need to make them heroes within their own business. You need to do everything possible to make them a fantastic success. Because if you can make those champions a success, they'll bring you along and ensure you're a success. Great, first big customer. But it's still quite tough. Now, when did that flip? When did that change? That really changed for us in 2009. So what had happened was the year before, was 2008, the big financial crash. And that was maybe one of the most important things for our company, because it suddenly shook people up, made people think differently. They could no longer justify just going off and signing that check for £3 million to buy a new system every 5 to 6 years. They had to suddenly think about it and think, well, is there a better way of doing this? Is there something else we should be looking at? And that was the year that it flipped from us having to educate people, knock down all their objections to the cloud first. That was the time that people started coming to us, saying, we want a cloud call center solution. Thomas Cook, First RFP we got that year said we wanted a cloud contact center solution, and it was great. Celebrate, because we could see things were changing and moving in our direction. Some of this thing that we've been maybe way out there in front of the market for so long, and it was finally catching up. And we also did an important change in the business that year. We decided to make sure we would focus on certain things. Start saying no to stuff. Because when you're a small company, it's very, very natural. You kind of grab anything you can find because you want to put food on the table. But it pulls you in all sorts of different directions, and the risk is you do nothing. You do lots of things, but you do nothing well. And it was terribly difficult to do, but we had to start saying no. And the biggest thing we did was we decided to focus on Salesforce. Because what we needed for our solutions, we needed a lot of customer data to really power our decisions and our routing and our intelligence. And that came from CRM systems, customer databases basically. And so we decided to focus on just on one CRM system, and we were going to be Salesforce because they were cloud like us, and we could see that they were beginning to grow, and we thought that they would become the leader in the space. And thankfully that was a really good bet, because we bet a lot on that. And some of you may know Salesforce now is a huge multi-billion-dollar company, and we managed to kind of ride their coattails up on that success. But also, as we could see things moving on, we could see the market starting to mature, we could see a bit of a threat on the horizon. We were doing quite well in the UK, but there were several companies like us that started a bit later, but started in the US, and they were well funded, because remember, we'd bootstrapped this up until this point. This was just our own money that had gone into it, and just the profits that we could make to grow the company. And we knew that we needed to go faster, because we could see those were these guys in the US, and sooner or later they were going to come and play in our playground, and they were a lot bigger than us. So we needed to grow faster, we needed to do more. So we looked at various things. We looked at flotation on AIM. We looked at possibly being acquired. We got a couple of good offers in for the company. But we decided to kind of double down, and we got our first round of VC funding, and that came through in 2010, and that let us really sort of accelerate, bring a lot more in. And one of the important things it also let us bring in, it let us bring in a new layer of executive management, of people that were used to building these kind of companies, had a lot more experience than maybe we had within the company at that time. And that really started to propel our growth and move us forward. Probably the next big event is 2013. At that time, we're growing well, we're doing pretty okay in the UK, we're pretty much the leading company in the UK. But we can see that the big prize is out there, is there in the US. It's a lot bigger market in the US, both a bigger market naturally, and they're more progressed. There's much more cloud adoption there. So there's much more potential for us if we can go and crack the US. But this is going to be tough. So we raise more funding, specifically to go out to the US. And then we make our plans. And first off, we think about doing what we've always done. We're going to take what we've built as our own physical data centers in the UK, take the same blueprint, replicate that out in the US. But we do the sums. And this is going to cost us £2.5, £3 million to build this data center. It's going to take a year to do it. It's not going to work because it's too long, it's too expensive, and we're kind of, what are we going to do now? How are we going to do this? So we decide, we think about it for a bit, and we think we're actually going to do a very bold move. We're going to deploy on AWS, Amazon Web Services. And we're not going to do that in the US, we're going to go to Australia as well. We're going to do this big. Now this was a big risk at the time, because there was a lot of worry within inside the company, actually externally as well, but whether this was possible, because there was a lot of this thought that, yeah, okay, AWS works for websites and so on, but will it work for us? Because we need to be very, very reliable. we need very low latency. We can't afford to drop any packets and so on. We're handling a lot of voice traffic here. And a lot of people were put off with the idea of AWS. But we'd kind of been doing some tests for the last sort of couple of years in the background. And we had lots of conversations with AWS, and they were able to point to Viber, who were just taking off based on AWS themselves. So we thought, this is a bit of a gamble, but we can do it. And the ironic thing is we were so scared about it ourselves that a lot of our salespeople said, don't ever tell the customers we're on AWS. Basically, the technology people were banned from talking to the customers in case they let this slip, because people would think, oh, we can't trust the AWS. But we'd do it, and we thought we'd do it, and we'd tried it out, and we were going to go for it. This was going to be it. We were going to go to the US, we were going to go on AWS, and we were going to go big. And we were going to try this out, fingers crossed. Not only were we going to launch on AWS, we just managed to land something very important. We were going to launch at Dreamforce that year. Now, Dreamforce is Salesforce's big user event every year. And probably a lot of you here don't know Dreamforce, but it's an absolutely massive event. Salesforce is very big, and they have a huge show there every year in San Francisco. About 70,000, 100,000 people now. San Francisco every year for this massive event. Take over pretty much the whole of the city, because San Francisco is actually not that big. It's a massive event there. And what they do each year at Salesforce is, one of the things they do is they run their own call center out on the show floor for all the people going to Dreamforce, to show off that, yes, we do this call center stuff as well. And we managed to land it that for that year, they were going to get rid of their incumbent supplier. They'd been doing it for the previous 3 years. And they were going to go with us. And that was going to be our big launch. So this was very high profile. We could either, if we didn't get this right, it was going to be pretty obvious to our major partner that we'd screwed up. But we got it there. We spent some couple of months getting our stuff up and running in AWS. 2 weeks before Dreamforce, we thought, yeah, we've done this. Just a bit of testing, it'll be fine. And one thing we hadn't really realized is quite how big the US is and quite how much the speed of light affects things. And we'd built our stuff out on the West Coast, and our telephony was on the East Coast. And so what was happening is, actually when people were calling in from San Francisco, it was going to the East Coast, back to the West Coast, back to the East Coast, back to the West Coast again. And this was putting in a lot of delays, and it wasn't great. I don't know, what did we do? So we thought, okay, we tear this all down, tore it all down, quickly let's build it up on the East Coast again. Thankfully in AWS we could do this. So it's a mad scramble, lots of late nights, built it up 1 week to go to Dreamforce, built it up in the East Coast. Now still a lot of teething problems. It's the first time we tried this. So lots of late nights on the phone to AWS and to our telco suppliers to iron out all the issues. But we managed to do it. 2 nights to go, we managed to thankfully get 1 good night's sleep in, then jump on the plane to Dreamforce. We managed to launch, and it all went well, and that was our big launch in the US. It was fairly chaotic at the time, but we got there, and we did it. I mean, that's the important thing. And then, yeah, there were quite a few bumps along the road, and different things happened, but we managed to grow well there in the US. We managed to deepen our relationship with Salesforce and be very successful. So if we sort of then fast forward to 2018, again, it was kind of one of those pivot points, because we could see now the market was beginning to mature, that the cloud market for call centers was really beginning to take off. And there was also quite a lot, you could see that there's quite a lot of consolidation in the market, that some of our competitors were beginning to IPO, or other people were being bought by public companies. It was getting really big and serious now. And it's kind of a bit like 2009 again, because we were there, we were in fourth place in the world. And we were growing faster than the others, but we still had to catch them up. And we knew that in maturing markets, it's really important to be in those top 3 positions, because the top player takes a huge chunk of the market. The next two do pretty well. And then fourth and below, you're really sort of fighting for the scraps, the crumbs off the table. So we needed to get into that position there. But we had a bit of a problem. These guys we were fighting with were all now public. And this was the beginning of 2018. And there was an awful lot of money sloshing around, particularly in the US public market. They were really, really investing heavily in sort of future product, future research and so on. And we just didn't have that kind of firepower. So we could go again and try and raise some more VC money. But we could see that was going to be difficult because some of our VCs had been with us since 2010. And a couple of them were starting to get a bit of itchy feet and thinking, yeah, we want to start to see a return on this soon. So that was going to be tough to go out and raise yet more money. We'd raised quite a lot of money in the past. So then one good thing happened. We actually got an offer for the company. So what there is there, and sort of just to explain things, been in sort of the business communication market, there tends to be sort of two sorts of companies at the moment. There's companies that do what we do, which are focused on the call center. When you're selling to a business, you've got people in the call center there that need an awful lot of functionality, that are on the phone pretty much all the time, really complex needs, doing a lot of high volume. And then you've got the rest of the people in the company that just maybe sort of phone somebody else within the company maybe once or twice a day, don't really need an awful lot of functionality. So these voice over IP providers providing the bulk of the business telephony, and then the call center providers providing that focused call center part. And more companies were wanting just a single supplier for both. So we ended up reselling a lot of different VoIP providers for the business telephony. And these VoIP business telephony providers also ended up reselling a lot of call center solutions. And we were approached by one of these VoIP providers to say, okay, well, this kind of makes sense. Why don't we put these two companies together and just have one company providing the complete solution? So we looked at this offer and thought, okay, it's quite generous, but it doesn't feel quite right, and not a particularly good fit for the company, particularly sort of culture-wise. They're just not quite nice people. So we like the idea, but we don't like the company. But why don't we go out and then start a process? If we can find this one company's interested in us, maybe there's other similar companies that would be interested in acquiring us. So we set up a very sort of quiet, discreet process to go out and see if these other companies were interested in us. And thankfully there was. We found a very good home there. We found a good home with Vonage. Some of you may know Vonage. They're sort of their heritage. They actually set up at a similar time in 2000 that I was doing voice over IP. Their heritage is a voice over IP, originally sort of a residential telephone company. I suppose sort of similar to kind of a BT or something like that, but focused over voice over IP. And they could see that their residential business was declining. So what they've been doing over the last 5 years is pivoting into being a business telephony company. So they've got quite deep pockets, they've got quite a lot of revenue. And they've been pivoting into this business side. And doing that quite successfully. And they were a very good fit for us. So they decided to acquire us and bring us into that business telephony portfolio, making actually a very large, very successful company, now the only company that has that complete set and complete suite of solutions. And that's how we had our exit last year. We agreed that in the summer, and then thankfully we were able to announce that, bring that through at Dreamforce again, because Dreamforce is kind of our sort of regular cadence of big things there, and had that exit last year. And it's something that I think we're very happy with, somewhere where we can feel that there's a good, solid home for NewVoiceMedia going forward, and every chance to then propel them into that sort of final third, second, first place within the company. So something I'm very proud of and very happy with. So an awful lot of things there to cover. I've had to chop out loads of things from the story, which you can imagine from 25 odd years of the story there of what's really happened with NewVoiceMedia. But very pleased to have your questions, because that's always the interesting bit for me, and seeing what you can come up with.
And there are lots of questions coming in. But first, thank you so much.
So we did find that useful. I think we did it way too late. It's something we kind of cottoned on to later on. Now I think it was really, really key for when we were hiring. I would like to have done it earlier, but when we were having a big sort of hiring rounds, sort of particularly sort of in the sort of early part of this sort of decade, it was really, really important and really, really core to get those values in to hire the right people. Because it's not just about, when you're hiring people, it's not just about can they do the job, it's about can they fit in the team. Because that is really sort of super important. Because one of the worst things you can do is you can hire somebody in who's technically great, but is really, really toxic to the atmosphere, because that just destroys things. So do get your values down early. Yeah, so when we sort of went in sort of waves, so at times we've been really hiring sort of very, very fast. I mean, well, fast for us, which is probably around sort of one person to every week or every sort of 2 weeks. Actually, no, that was probably just on the technology side. We're probably doing similar on the sales side. So we were having, at times we tended to batch them up. So we probably had sort of like 10, 12 people every month or so and would actually sort of join the company, which doesn't sound a lot there, but that's actually quite a lot to absorb. That's a good one. I think it's self-belief and bloody mindedness at times that you've got to sort of have that self-belief to sort of take you through when things are tough, and to really have that focus on the dream. Now at the same time, you kind of have, when you're running a business, you kind of have to have almost sort of that real sort of duality in your head, because you've got to have that ruthless self-belief and focus on that goal and knowing you can get it, but also sit there and think, is this right? Do I need to tweak it? Do I need to change it there? And that's kind of quite difficult to explain, but that's what I'd say. That's an interesting one. I kind of, it still doesn't quite seem real, to be honest. So maybe ask me again in sort of 6 months. Because it's kind of difficult, a bit difficult letting go, because you've been so focused on something for so many years. Yes. So the one book I'm giving out to, well, basically pushing on people at the moment, whether they like it or not, it's a book that I've just discovered recently. It's called Permission to Screw Up by Christine Hadid. And it's the story of, she's a very successful CEO, and she runs, it sounds crazy, she runs a cleaning business out in the US, but a cleaning business that hires students. And it's all about sort of leadership and CEO skills. But it's one of these books that's actually, because a lot of these books, leadership books you read, is all about the things that went right and the things that they did and about how successful and brilliant they were. And this book actually kind of tells the truth, because it's about all the things that went wrong and about how she learned from it. And she's a truly inspiring leader, and I think it's got a great message there for anybody that wants to build a business. So I would recommend go out and read that book. I would get hiring right to begin with. So I think we made 2 mistakes when we started. One, we hired people too fast, because we didn't quite need the people we needed at the time, and we didn't get in then the right people. So I think the key to driving a business forward is to have the right people within the business, and that's actually a very, very tough thing to do. So I would say take your time at it, make sure you get it right, make sure they have both the skills and the technical fit, and make sure that they're better than you. You shouldn't feel afraid of getting better people in, because you want to get great people in, because that's what's going to really drive your business and multiply it along, is to have these fantastic people in. So I think that's just something I would like to have got right a lot earlier on. It took us a long time to learn that lesson. Well, it was kind of easy, because we'd been friends for sort of quite a few years before sort of starting the business, and there was kind of that, obviously we had that chemistry sort of going between us, but I think it was also a good mix of skills. I felt that I could sort of, one, there was that huge trust between us, but also respect, skills, and that kind of balance. I mean, it's an interesting one, because there's a bit of a sort of story there. So unfortunately, my co-founder had to kind of bow out of the business after several years for sort of ill health and so on. And so, I mean, it's gone through many iterations. We're still, thankfully, we're still good friends. He had got quite a tough time several years into the business, and we kind of lost touch a bit. But it's good now that we're sort of re-engaged, and I think we've managed to sort of keep that good friendship, even because you will have fractious times with your co-founders. But I think it's really good that that's there. And I think now with the actual exit, it's kind of almost brought us back closer together again. Because I know that all the well, I suppose it's coming back to the Christine Hadid quote. I know all the terrible things that I've sort of done wrong, and all the horrendous mistakes I've made over the years. But it's kind of okay. It's okay to make mistakes. Everybody does it. Just learn from them and be better the next time.
Ashley, thank you so much indeed.